Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to Ian Jones. This singer-songwriter has just released his first album, Results Not Typical, but to call him a new artist would be a stretch. Like countless musicians before him, this Seattle resident spent decades playing in bands, touring, doing studio sessions, and generally slogging it out in the trenches of the music biz before finally deciding to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. All that time and experience inform every track on the fittingly titled Results Not Typical, a set of rootsy troubadour fare that will appeal to fans of Jackson Browne, Van Morrison, Nanthiel Rateliff, and other open-hearted singer-songwriters. Recorded in California with producer Jesse Siebenberg and a cast of first-call players, it's a great introduction to an artist whose time has finally come. A few weeks before the album dropped, Jones got on the Zoom from his Pacific Northwest home to talk about taking his shot, the good old days of Seattle, smoking with Jim Messina, and more. Enjoy. Well, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. I got to tell you, my compliments on this album. That is a lovely piece of work.
It was a bucket list record, and it was a step unbeknownst to me until now. I can look back now and I can see what I did. It was a big step for me to trust someone who I know. I mean, I'm friends with Jesse. But to trust someone to take my creations and to say to them, hey, you can do whatever you want with them. And it's because it's scary. I've done it before. I had done it kind of before in the past and got burned pretty hard. But really, at the end of the day, what this was is if I wanted to not be on my deathbed and saying, what would have happened if I just would have worked with a really good producer and like the best musicians in the world? And that's what we did. And I think what we've done is we've created a template, because now the next record is already written and Jesse has the stems. He has 17 songs that we're not sure when we're going to start working on, but he loves them. And it's similar but different to this. And he's trying to figure out who's going to be the drummer and who's going to be how are we going to do this? So I'm looking forward to moving on.
What, Joey Warnicker's not a good enough drummer to have back?
Well, he's like, right? He's like, well, you know, what if we get Chamberlain to play drums? And I'm like, oh, okay.
Sure, yeah.
You know.
Maybe dig up Charlie Watts, get him to come down.
I know, right? I know. Who's the other guy? Who's the other big LA session guy that plays with everyone?
I don't know, Steve Gadd or Steve Ferrone.
I know. Well, at that point, it's like fill in the blank, and it's like who, you know, exactly. So
yeah, get Jim Keltner in. Yeah.
Keltner, that's who I was thinking of. Who I would love to play with. I've met him many times. Yeah, I don't think we can go wrong. The thing was that when we made this record was the reason it's called Results Not Typical is because none of the guys had heard the songs.
Right.
And I was going in and I had this sneaking suspicion that Jesse was going to bring in some heavy hitters. So he told me who they were, and I purposely didn't research what they had done in the past because I didn't want to be completely crapping myself knowing who I was sitting in a room with.
Okay.
So they all showed up and they just were like dudes. And so we started talking and we went through some of the songs, and the very first song we did, I told someone this the other day. I got there on a Friday. Jesse and I went into his garage and we recorded the songs acoustically. And then we went back on Saturday and he had taken at least one of the songs and completely chopped it up and put it back together. And basically said, he played it for me. He goes, can you learn this way by tomorrow? And I listened to it, and what he had done is it's the song You're Gone. And he had taken like one measure at the end of each phrase and just deleted it and then pushed it all together. And I listened to it and I was like, damn you, it's so much better now. You know, a good producer. So we went in on Sunday night to set up the drums and everything, and we were hanging out. We had a couple drinks, and then we went, and we didn't really go over the music. And we went, and he had sent the guys the music, but I don't know that they listened to it. So we went into the studio, and it was drums and bass in the main big room. Jason Soda was an acoustic guitar in an isolation room. Palmer was on piano in the piano isolation room, and I was in my own isolation room. Jesse's like, you don't get to do anything but sing. I said, okay. So we came out, and I play guitar. I do a lot of double capo stuff.
Okay.
And it's a long story, but at the end of the day, it's just because I'm lazy. And I had my double capos, and Jason Soda was using no capos. So the first time I played the song through, sang it. The second time, he kind of played along with me. And this whole time, everyone else was taking notes. And then the third time, he was like, don't play. I'll play it. And then if I make a mistake, stop me and show me. And then the fourth time through, he played it better than I could ever play it, which was kind of like, okay, so you just learned the song, you played it 4 times, and you're playing it better than I could ever play it without capos. I'm like, fine, now I know who I'm dealing with. So we all went to our respective rooms, and Joey's playing drums, and there's no click track. Jesse's like, hey, let's do this old school. Let's record it live. Very first take of the very first song, we start, boom, we're rolling, we do the song. I can't remember what song it was. We do it. As it's fading out, everyone's sitting there. Joey's holding the sticks. We all got our cans on, looking around. Gets quieter and quieter, fades out. Then you hear Jesse go, well, I think that was the one, but we should probably do another one or two just in case. And I don't think we did more than 3 takes on any of the songs.
That's great. I mean, because then the songs are still alive then, they're not, you're not beating them to death and trying to look for perfectionism.
Oh yeah, and he changed a couple. Like we were going to do one of the songs. I remember we were going to do, this happened with Athens Smiles, Without You on Lost, and to a certain extent Lost Highway, which is going to be the single. Well, we're getting ready to do it, and Jesse comes out of the control room holding a metronome, and he walks over to Joey and goes, hey, how about this? And he does this thing, and I can hear him. I can't hear what they're saying. I can see Joey go, yeah, that's great. And then they start, and I'm like, hey, whoa. Now it's twice as fast. I got my pencil out. I'm like looking at the words, and I'm like, I don't know if I can sing all these. And I'm like scratching words out, trying to make it work. And we did. We made it work. And we did 5 songs the first day and 6 songs the second day. And then I had to leave on Wednesday because I had to fly back to Seattle, and they were starting to overdub the guitars, and I had to leave. And then Jesse was just send me little teasers like, oh, listen to this. And it would cut off, and I'd be like, dude, you're killing me. Because that's how we are. We were friends before we worked together on this. So, and he's got a sense of humor. It's like, it would be like if John Cleese was your producer. I mean, it's like that. So
which is weird because I don't get that sense from Supertramp that they're this band of wacky guys, so
oh my god, no, it's totally, so here's a story, and this, you can print it or you can just take it off the record, but the last time I was down there, I can't remember what we were doing, but it was Jesse and Dave Palmer and myself, and we had a bottle of Tito's that we were working on, and I can't remember where we were, but we ran out of mixer. So we're running around at 2 a.m. through the streets of Ojai, California, stealing limes and lemons and oranges off people's trees so we could have more mixer. Just a total ruckus, like just total chaos, pandemonium, screaming like little kids. And I'm like, if this is making a record, I don't drink anymore, but at the time I was like, hey, if this is what making records is like, sign me up. I'm good.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you did this quite a while ago, so it must be great to finally have it coming out, right?
Well, the pandemic didn't do anyone any favors. I mean, I don't have to explain that. And we had tried to do it, and then we put the brakes on it pretty hardcore. Because with as much as this record cost, which, it's a bucket list record. My dad passed away in 2010, and this is one of the reasons I'm doing this, and I'm taking a completely different approach to music now after my dad passed away, because my dad lived his whole life. He went to Harvard, went to UMass, studied under Robert Frost, was a professor.
Wow.
He saved every penny his whole life so that when he retired, him and his wife could travel around and live out their days. Well, he was in phased retirement when she got cancer, and within a month she was gone. And then I took care of him, and then he got cancer and it took him. And I remember him saying to me, he said, look, I know what you're trying to do with music. I know what you want to do with music. And he said, let me tell you something. He goes, you get one shot on this rock.
Right.
And there's no do-overs. So if you want to do something, do it. Do it now.
Yeah.
He goes, but you're going into something that's an art form, and you have to, don't just do it and work really hard at it. He goes, but you have to respect it. You have to do it with dignity, and you have to do it with your head up. You have to respect the craft. You have to respect the trade. Don't waste people's time. And it took me a while. It took me 6 years to really figure out and have that really set in. And so now I'm approaching this completely differently than I think I would have otherwise. Every day is a gift. I'm very fortunate to be able to be a conduit to songs. I mean, I don't know how I write. I can't sit down and write a song. They kind of float through the air, and I'm there and I grab them and I interpret them and then I push them out.
You're just the antenna.
Yeah, they say it's like, some people say it's like fishing, but you have to have a fishing pole and just make sure you're not fishing downstream from Bob Dylan and Neil Young. But it's true. You can't, like, I'll tell you what, here's an example, perfect example. Last night I was sitting there, I was brushing my teeth, and the song popped into my head, and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. And it's kind of like this one song that I've written called Last Call, but it's different. And I had this thing, and ooh, here comes the bridge. Here comes the middle eight. I have it all in my head. And I'm like, you're going to go to bed, but at least grab your phone and sing it into your phone. Yeah. And I come out of my bedroom and I sit down in my bed and I'm going for my phone. And my son comes up and goes, hey, Dad, look at this. And he holds up his phone and it's something. And I was like, it's gone.
Oh, well, there'll be another one.
Yeah, no, there'll be another one. And I'm like, and I've learned to not be upset when that happens.
Yeah.
And so I'm lucky enough to be a conduit for these things that come through. I've learned because I've studied very hard, and I've worked with people like, Jim Messina, and some other brilliant, and Jesse, and I pay attention and I listen and I try to take that and I try to put it towards the craft. But I'm doing this almost tongue in cheek. I'm like, I'm so lucky to be able to do this. And I think I have a shot. I mean, I don't want to be famous. I mean, that's kind of craziness. I'm too old, but I think I could probably carve out an okay living. I love performing, and everywhere I go and play, people really seem to like what I do. I tell stories, and I've never had a problem. And I'm like, why not give it a shot? So if I'm
this is the advantage though of kind of, obviously you've been doing this for years and years and years, but this is the advantage of having those years and having this experience and that life experience to draw on, you know what I mean? Because it's different than when you were probably a 20-year-old kid playing in shitty bars and shitty bar bands with your guitar, right?
If you could hear, and I've said this to a couple of people, if you heard my first record, you'd be like, that's not you. This sucks. Because
when did that come out?
93.
Okay.
93. I still have.
You're pretty good at concealing your back catalog, or it's just vanished.
Well, I purposely, right? Well, most of it happened before social media,
right?
So I just have never put it up. So how would they know? Yeah,
because I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is sort of a debut album, in terms of who you are now, I'd say, right?
Well, yeah, because I was in bands,
right,
and then that was a dead end street. So I'm like, all right, well, if I'm gonna be a solo artist, I'm gonna be a solo artist, and that way I don't have to worry about bands. Well, I have to worry about hiring bands, which presents its own set of problems. Sure. But I've been very fortunate that I play with some pretty decent guys. But I also then can go out by myself and play by myself, which I've been doing. I just got back from Nashville in Texas, which I had a blast. Did really well, got asked back. So I must not have made anyone mad. And like I said, I'm just going forward with this, having the time of my life, enjoying every minute of it. My family's very supportive. I have 2 kids. My daughter's going to be 17 in April, and my son's 12. And my son's going to miss me the most, I think. My wife's like, we've been together 30 years. She's like, see ya, get out of here.
Sooner the better, bub.
I was surprised they remembered my birthday this morning. I woke up expecting them to be like an every other day, but they did remember. Yeah, I think I'm looking at this from a different perspective. I'm very grateful that I'm able to do it. I've put together a very good team. You know, Wendy's awesome, and I feel just so super fortunate to have met her and to have had her say, after Carrie retired, to have her say, hey, I'm on your team, I'm staying on. I'm like, great. And I've got Jordan Zucker and Brad Paul working the radio angle, and that's who I'm going to go out. They're putting together this radio tour, and then Jordan's going to fly out and join me for half of it, which is, I must not be doing something terribly wrong if he wants, because that guy wouldn't jump in the van with some young guy he doesn't know unless he thought it was going to be fun. It's nothing else.
Yeah, well, I mean, it speaks to you, I think, mostly, but it also speaks to the music. I mean, this is like I said, it's great stuff. It's got a real classic sound to it. It's got a real 70s California troubadour aspect to it that I don't think, in keeping with the title, people might expect from a guy from Seattle. You know, I mean, I look at you and I think, okay, here comes I don't know, Built to Spill. You know,
it's cold. That's why I have the stocking cap.
Hey, I'm in Canada. Don't give me that. I'm in Canada. Don't give me cold.
Oh, well, okay. No, that's right. That's right. You're in Winnipeg, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, it's probably a little chillier there than it is here.
Just a bit, but just a bit.
I'm driving down through Oregon and California. Then I'm up Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. And I'm like,
You'll notice it in Montana. Yeah.
Bring the chains,
yeah.
You know.
But so I mean, I can understand where that sound comes from in terms of having Jesse and recording in Ojai with his guys. It's kind of, I would think, almost kind of seeped into the woodwork of what he's doing. But for you as a songwriter, it kind of is an unexpected influence. Where does it come from?
First of all, by the way, I just got a sidebar. The David Bowie poster behind you, that was my very first live big concert ever. June 17th, 1983, very first show ever in the Tacoma Dome with the Tubes opening.
I saw I saw them on that tour as well. Yes.
They
went up and did Canada after that.
I digress. So influences. So growing up in the 70s in Parkland, Washington, my dad was a professor at PLU, but he up and left when I was 4. And it was my mom with 3 kids. How she did it, I don't know. She must have had a cape and a superpowers that we don't know about. And it was the 70s, so whatever happened back then. I joke a lot and say that my babysitter was a record player, and I learned at a very young age how to use the turntable and respect the records so they didn't get ruined. And we had a lot of records. But the thing is that we also, so for what we had, I was very familiar with. But what we didn't have, I didn't even know about. So it was interesting when I met Jim Messina. I went down to do the workshop logins in Montecito with Jimmy, and because my manager said, "Hey, you should come down and do this workshop with Jim Messina," and I was like, "Who?" He goes, "Jim Messina," and I'm like, "Yeah, I have no idea who that is," because we never had any Poco or Buffalo Springfield or Loggins and Messina records. So why would I know who he was? A lot of Simon and Garfunkel, James Taylor, all the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Cat Stevens, Eagles. I think, did I say Simon and Garfunkel? Yep. That kind of folky roots sort of stuff from the late, and then there was, Mamas and the Papas, the Seekers, Judy Collins, all that stuff. And my mom would listen to it, but I would listen to mostly the Beatles, Billy Joel, Elton John. And then when I was old enough to walk down the street to my friend's house on my own, it was that's where I got into the Stones and Bowie and Led Zeppelin. And then from there, Iggy Pop and Richard Hell and the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and that whole New York punk scene.
Well, and I mean, and you would have been what, in your early 20s when grunge was right down the street, basically.
I remember, oh man, I could tell you stories
Go ahead.
about parties with Andy Wood and park shows in parking garages. I mean, but see, that's the thing. So I try to explain to people like these young kids these days.
This is the kind of thing you want to tell, that you tell your fans.
Does it come to that already? Where's my rocking chair? I try to tell the kids, I'm like, because Seattle right now is suffering the same fate, if you want to call it that happened to San Francisco. All the places where where there was art, San Francisco in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Haight-Ashbury, art, music, all that great stuff, culture. I just read the Jan Wenner book, and man, I wish I could have been around then. And then in comes Silicon Valley, in comes all the tech, drives the prices up. The artists are like, shit, where are we going to go? So they bail. And now the soul of the city, it's a shell of itself. There's some of the things are still there, but the people and the art is gone. And the same thing kind of happened to Seattle. The same thing's happening to Austin. The same thing's happening to Missoula. So back in the late 80s and the early 90s, Seattle was a place where if you were in a band and you put up a couple posters in Seattle now, there's people that go around in the morning with their coffee and take posters down because they think it's littering. So you can't even put up flyers anymore because they'll be down the same day. And heaven forbid you confront, you've heard of Karens. Oh man, the whole new level in Seattle. But in those times, you'd go to play a show and we'd be down at the Showbox or we'd be down at the OK Hotel, and the guys from the Posies or Barrett Martin from the Trees would come out, and it was just a community. And they weren't like, hey, come play shows with us or let's jam. It was just, hey, we're here to support you.
Yeah.
And we think it's great what you're doing. We love your songs. And then we'd go see them, and then you'd see him at the Crocodile for another show, and everyone handshakes and like, hey, let me bum a cigarette from you, and everyone would hang out and have, because it was like a brotherhood. It was like this big, huge support system. And today, I don't know. It seems like and maybe it's because I'm old and jaded and get off my lawn, but it's almost like it's like a bunch of high school cliques. And if you're not one of the cool kids, then you don't get invited to do this thing or that thing. And I at one point, like my business partner in the label and my / manager, we joke about this all the time because he was a talent buyer for 20 years in Seattle, and we've seen it all come and go. Yeah, well, we're not worried about that because what we're doing is on a much grander scale. And it's not that I think that I'm on a grander scale. It's just that I don't have any aspiration to make it big in Seattle. I want to just go play everywhere and introduce my music to everyone all over the country and all over the world. And I think that in doing that, the people in Seattle will be like, oh, the prodigal son returns. I don't know. As long as I'm having fun and getting to make music, I really don't care where I am. Although I want to live here. I want to live in the Northwest because this is, of all the places I've been, this is where I want to hang.
Right, fair enough. What bands were you in back in the day?
I was in a band, Frenzy, Phrenzy, with a cat named Brian Castillo, who's one of the more talented musicians I've ever met. Music's a little obscure. And it was he and I and this guy named Donald Glaude, who's now a huge international DJ. Still, he's older than me by 4 years, and he's on tour all over the world playing, like doing DJ stuff.
Wow.
So that was interesting. And then I moved to Seattle, and I was in a band called Homotion for like 35 seconds until that band broke up. And then we started the Orange King, which was me and a guy named Jeff Lorien, who was in Coffin Break. Was as a guitar player, he had this really kind of Jimmy Page, like Chuck Berry thing going, which I thought was really complimentary to what I thought I could write. Turns out I wasn't really right, but it worked. And then that split up. But the management deal we had got, the manager was from Santa Barbara, and then he said, "Hey, you need to come down and do this workshop with Messina." And so I went down. And I remember I walked into the room. It was a classic needle off the record moment. I walk in, I'm looking around. I'd been in my van for like 3 days, hadn't showered. And I'm looking around. I was pretty sure I was in the same. They're setting up all this music gear and these like in the round, and there's all these speakers and microphones, and everyone's busy being out. And I walk in and they kind of look at me and I'm like, "Hey, which one of these guys is Jimmy?" And he was standing like 3 feet from me. And they all, everyone stopped like, "Oh." And he turns and looks at me and he goes, "I'm Jimmy. Who are you?" I'm just like, "I'm Ian. My manager told me I should come take this. Hey, where can I have a cigarette?" And no one smoked but him. And he goes, "All right." And so we went out and we had a cigarette together and we smoked the same kind of cigarettes. And then we started talking about bird hunting and all this stuff. And I think he was just like, "Who is this guy who doesn't even know who I am?" And it was probably refreshing to him because everyone in there was like kissing his ass.
Well, exactly.
And he is an underrated guitar player, first of all. Second of all, I think they probably wanted it to be Messina and Loggins, but he was like, no. We'll let dude take the front thing. I'll just stay here in the back and produce. Because he's such a brilliant songwriter and producer, and he understands people and human nature. He's a shrewd businessman. And he taught me a lot. So I could never thank, and I've seen him a couple times since then on tour and stuff, and I've always, shook his hand and said thanks, and he remembers me, but it's not like we're pals. And then I was down and I was like, well, shoot, Santa Barbara's pretty nice. And there's nothing holding me in Seattle. So me and my girl were like, "Hey, let's go to California." So I moved to Santa Barbara and she moved to LA where she got a job, and we kind of long distance commuted it for a while. And I was doing solo stuff. And then we started this band, me and there was this trio called the Kinsella Band, and me, and Santa Barbara's a tiny place.
Yeah.
And we were doing co-bills so many times in a row that they finally were like, "Hey man, let's get together. We'll learn your songs and then you can learn ours and we'll back each other up." Oh, okay. So we met at the bass player's studio and started working. And it was one of those things, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you're like, "Okay, well, let's work on a song." And then everyone shakes their head and it's like 3.5 hours later and you're like, "Whoa, what happened?" It was one of those time stand still things. And we were all like, "Oh," and then everyone's trying to be cool, like, "Oh, well, that was kind of fun. Maybe we should do that again sometime." And someone's like, "Yeah, well, what are you guys doing tomorrow night?" It's like, so we practiced like 5 nights in a row. Then me and the other singer were like, "Hey, let's just start a band. What's the worst that can happen? We can make a record and go on tour." So we made a record, and the band was called FM 1960, which is the road in Houston that they lived on. And I thought it was a brilliant band name because only people from Texas know that Farm to Market Road are called FM and 1960. So FM, like from a radio perspective, is FM dial, but 1960 is like an AM number.
Right.
So I thought that's cool. So we made a record. We ended up doing a 2.5 month US tour, and the bass player melted. And our last show, he walked off stage and said, "I'm never playing with you guys ever again."
Oh, well.
And like every other band that's close, we had A&R people, Dishwalla, Toad the Wet Sprocket, they were all in the audience. It was our last show, our only show in Santa Barbara, line around the block, sold out. And that was it. So, and then I moved to LA, played and toured out of there solo. I came home, tried to put together a band, and we did the Jones Family Fortune record, which I think is up on some social media stuff. It's not very good, but I mean, it is what it is. If you want to dig back that far, you'll find some subpar material in everyone's catalog. So
refreshing candor, sir.
Right. I mean, and I guess I could have scrubbed that off of there, but then everyone's gonna be like, "Who's this 53-year-old guy with 2 records?"
Uh-huh.
but I'm not going to put them all up there because people would be like, oh my God, this is terrible. It's really what it is. It's a testament to how many times I've fallen on my face and got back up. How many times have I failed miserably and said, all right, and learned my lesson and then move on. And if you do that enough, I think, unless you're just an idiot, you're going to get better a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah.
Over time, I think I've gotten better, and I've listened, and the biggest thing I listened to was this saying, you're not a rock and roll singer.
Oh, I was going to say, you're listening to your hat?
No, it's just in my head. It's like I wanted to, because in the early 90s,
Yeah.
we had Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Mudhoney.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah. And then I'm out there trying to sing like that. It's like, this is terrible. I was terrible at it. And then you go back and you start doing stuff that sounds more like, James Taylor or Paul McCartney. And it's like, well, there's my wheelhouse. And you know what? It's okay. Not everyone is going to be Chris Cornell or Ed Vedder. I mean, and that's cool. Yep. They're awesome. And I'm really glad they exist, or in, Chris's case existed, because it gave us all that beautiful art. And, I think my job is I picked this lane for like these two records, at least. This is, and Jesse was like, hey, I really want to go for that kind of, you said it yourself, that kind of mid 70s kind of outlaw California country thing. And I think we nailed it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's, it's not like pinpoint specific, and because there's other influences, and it moves around a bit. Sometimes it's over in Nashville, and sometimes, there's at least one song on there that's very Van Morrison to me, and there's some Jackson Browne, and so it's got a range of stuff in there. But this to me, hearing you talk about all your experiences and everything you've been through, all of that is in the songs, not necessarily overtly, but it's all part and parcel of the world and the influences and the experiences and everything else you put into all these songs. You couldn't have written these songs when you were 20 years old or 25 years old, or maybe even 40 years old. I don't know. It's taken you this far, and you had to go through all that shit to make this album.
The song Someday that's on the record, that was written for a dear friend of mine named Ronnie Owens. And I don't know if you remember this, but about 11 years ago, just after Thanksgiving, there was a fella down in Parkland, Washington, where I grew up, who was up for his 3 strikes you're out. But somehow he wasn't in jail. And he went to one of his friends and he said, I'm not going back to jail. Watch this. And he walked into a coffee shop and he shot and killed 4 cops. One of them was my friend Ronnie Owens.
Wow.
And within 48 hours, that song was written and was on its way to being put out and mastered. And I thought maybe we could put it out and donate the proceeds to the family. And I was ill prepared to try to do that in such short notice. And I fell on my face, made some mistakes. And by the time it was finally up and available for everyone to hear it, some other guy from Nashville who was from the Northwest had come along, and he had written a song, and he got all the kudos. So I ended up never even recouping the recording costs. But it's a good song. And actually, if you go back and listen to the original version of it, you can hear me almost in tears singing it.
Sure.
Because it was so fresh. And I remember playing it for Jesse, and he was like, that goes on the record. So back to what you were saying about, you have to live through shit and then be able to digest it. You have to have the mental capacity to digest it. And then, and this is funny because I tell people quite often that, like, when I play shows, we'll talk about writing songs, and I try to get people involved in the conversation. And I joke and I say, if I wasn't a songwriter, my therapy bill would probably be massive.
Sure.
Because I had a fucked up life, man. I mean, growing up, my dad left early. We were bread and cheese line poor, living on the West Coast in this little shitty neighborhood. But every summer we'd fly back to the East Coast because my dad's folks from Manhattan and summered in the Hamptons. And my mom's folks were on a 500-acre apple orchard in Massachusetts and had a house on the coast of Maine. So every summer we'd go over. I mean, I got slapped on the back of my wrist with a butter knife because I used the wrong fork at dinner. And then we'd fly back to my mom making us shirts out of the curtains, you know? I mean, it just was good. So you learn how to take that. And I write songs about stuff. Sometimes it happened a long time ago. And I get up and I get to sing it on stage, and everyone is hearing it and they're going, oh, wonder what this is about. And if I've done my job, I try to make them vague enough so that you or someone else can say, yeah, that could be about my life.
Sure.
But really what I'm singing about is my life. And it's very cathartic, and it keeps me from having to go to therapy. I mean, I have never seen a therapist in my life because my therapist is hanging right here on the wall.
Yeah. Well,
Behind the piano.
And it sounds like you've got enough material to draw on for a box set at this point.
Oh my God. One of the reasons I haven't put all those old records out is because, you know, when we made those records, most of the time we were in our basement with like 2 microphones. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know what a preamp was, you know. Terrible recordings, terrible production, but good songs. So I could go back at some point when, if I can, you know, if once I get caught up doing all the new stuff, I could probably go back and rework some of those old songs, and they would fit perfectly in with what I'm doing now. So
well, that's probably worth doing. Well,
yeah, unfortunately, making records like this is not inexpensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully I can keep doing this and keep making records. The next one is going to be really good. Jesse and I have joked about making we call it the Elliott Smith record, which is going to be kind of dark and weird and kind of go back to that early 92, 93 Seattle, you know, that kind of Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies, but more, not heavy electric, but more like acoustic. That's what we call it the Elliott Smith, because he was kind of weird. There's a rock record. And then Jesse goes, you know, we do one more fully produced record. We should probably do like a Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska acoustic sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, man, you're the producer. Whatever you want to do, let's do it.
So you guys have a whole 5-year plan mapped out here, it sounds like.
As a matter of fact, I have a 5-year plan. Yes. Because the other thing that I haven't even mentioned is that coming at this time around, I'm treating it like a business. Because they don't call it the music business just because it sounds neat. You know. Yep. And it is the music business, and half the time I think I should get my head checked trying to go into this industry, because, you know, Hunter Thompson said it right. He's like, man, the entertainment industry is slimy backroom deals of whatever. And then there's a
shallow trench filled with, and it has its downsides, right?
And he's right. It's like, you know, for every great person you meet, there's 3 people that will stab you in the back and steal your wallet.
Yep.
You know, and so good advice I've got is keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Don't trust anyone. Yeah. You know, watch your back at all times. Be prepared to audit everyone. And because, and then be prepared for what you find when you do that audit.
Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I think it's, you know, there's never been a better time to be in the position you're in, because I mean, you now live in a world where you have access to your entire marketplace, an entire global marketplace, and they have access to you, and you don't necessarily need, you know, you don't need a major label deal to get your music out or to make money from your music. Obviously, it is a way more hands-on approach now. You have to, you know, be your own boss and be your own manager and be your own agent to some degree, but you know, you can set all these things up yourself and run them from your home and record at home. And, you know, you can do a lot as a cottage industry now that you couldn't do 20 years ago.
Yeah, I can do some demos here, but I used to be part owner of a recording studio, and I will never make a record of anywhere other than a good studio. ever again.
Man, is there a job you haven't had?
Yeah, there's lots of jobs I haven't had, but like, so basically for the last 30 years or so, I work on houses. I've been doing construction, and wherever I go, I try to find a construction job that maybe I wasn't in. I moved to California and I got into coatings and custom cement work, and I learned all about that. And then I, stored that away. And then I went over here and I did this. And then I used to just paint, because that was easy. All you need is a ladder and a brush and some rollers, and you can roll around in an old Subaru wagon and make money, right?
Yeah.
Well, then one thing led to another, and I really saw a lot of people that were just not very good at what they did. And I was like, I had one lady was bitching about someone could come and screwed up her kitchen. And I was like, well, look, do you want me to fix it? And she said, well, can you? I said, well, yeah. So it took me like 4 hours, and I fixed the thing the guy had spent like 4 days trying to do. And she was like, wow, that's exactly what I wanted. And I was like, well, yeah, that's because that's what you said. She goes, how come the other guy couldn't do it? I said, well, I don't know. She goes, you want to remodel my basement? And I was like, okay. So I did the basement. She was like, you should be doing this, not just painting. There's way more money in it. And I'm like, oh God. So then I ended up getting more saws and more stuff. And when I lived in LA, I worked on one house for the entire time. And it was as it turns out, it was Sam Phillips' old house on Beverly Glen in Beverly Hills. And one day I remember asking, I was outside working on the fence or something, and I said, hey, Sharon, how come these tour buses keep stopping by in front of your house? She goes, oh, because this used to be Sam Phillips' house. I'm like, you mean like Sam Phillips? She's like, yeah. I'm like, Sun Records Sam Phillips, like Elvis and like Roy Orbison probably hung out here. And she was like, yeah, probably. And I was like, cool, But I worked on the whole house. And then at one point, God, was it James Cameron came along and said, we want to film a movie in this house. And so they did Spanglish.
Okay.
In that house. That was a Beverly Hills house. And then they were like, oh, and don't worry, we'll put this house back together way better than it was when, they kicked them out. They rented them a house, moved everything out, destroyed their house. And I told Sharon, I said, you better put a clause in here that says, if you're not satisfied with the work, they'll pay to fix it. And so she did, and it's a good thing, because so then I spent the next year and a half fixing what Sony had done. And it was funny, because I remember I handed her the first invoice, and she's like, that's not enough, double it. And I was like, okay. So I got paid for the last year and a half by Sony to work on this house. And they were the nicest people in the world, and we became great friends. In fact, when my wife and I got married, Sharon and Paul Crane bought more presents for us than everyone else combined. So,
right. But the analogy is kind of the same to the music business, though. I mean, you can try and be just the guy who paints, or you can be the guy who has all the saws and all the shit and takes on the bigger jobs with more work and more responsibility and da.
Try not to do that anymore with anything. I mean, I'm still remodeling houses. I've tightened I only work like 3 miles from my house. I do kitchens and bathrooms and basements. And what I really would like to do is just buy houses and remodel them and sell them, because that way there's no clients, because then you don't have to worry about like, oh, sorry, your kitchen's torn up, I got to go on the road for 3 weeks, be back, can't really do that. But with music either, I'm kind of like, keep it simple. That's one of the hardest things. The better I get at playing guitar and at playing piano, well, that's another thing altogether, is when you get better, you think, oh, and I remember I had known John Mayer from a long time ago. And, one of the things is, he's such a great guitar player, is when you're that good, try to write a song that's really simple.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean,
anyone who barely can play the guitar can pick up and play.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the easy. I was telling someone the other day, I can't remember the name of the song. It's off of Neil Young. It's, somewhere on a desert highway, she rides a Harley Davidson, the long blonde hair blowing in the wind. That's only 2 chords. Yeah, that song's only 2 chords. It's like, dude, how did you do that?
Well, yeah, that's the trick. I mean, it's certainly not comparable to Neil Young, but, Richie Blackmore wrote Smoke on the Water. Right. You can pick up a guitar and learn that song within 5 minutes, and it's a classic. Everybody knows it,
Yep. So it's trying to keep it simple, trying to keep it so that it's fun. But when you're dealing with a business, like especially right now, like this week is freaking chaos. I'm getting ready to leave for 3.5 weeks on this radio tour. I'm trying to get work stuff lined up. I'm trying to hang with my kids, trying to hang with my wife, trying to do all this stuff. And at the same time, like I get this thing from the US government, census due date reminder, you haven't done your census. I'm like, oh Christ, I've got so much stuff going on. And Kyle, my partner, he's like, what are we going to do when all this stuff is done? You're going to have all this free time. I'm like, I'll find something to do.
Life will find you something to do.
Go play more shows. It'll be fun, you know. So hopefully that'll happen. We're really trying to branch out. Texas looks good. Nashville was receptive. This trip, we're going to go down Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico, then go up Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, over to Idaho. And speaking of Kyle, he's trying to call me right now. That's going to be a loop, a Western loop. So if we do that like 3 times a year, it takes about 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks. And then hop over to Texas, play. There's like a red dirt circuit that's all the way from almost Kansas, all the way down past San Antonio. And then depending on where the record does well, and that's the big thing. The Evergreens, which we did during the pandemic, made it to like 100 in the AMA charts. And that was demos. That was me and Jesse just goofing off. We did 6 songs and it was like, everyone was like, wow, this is great. And we're like, don't tell anyone. It's just me and him. We did everything on the record.
Wow.
And I think this record's going to do pretty well. So far, the response that we've got is really good. And I hope, for a lot of reasons, but I hope because somewhere I think my dad's going to be proud.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he would be anyway, but yeah. And I think you're right. I think this will, like I said, it's got so much warmth and depth and emotion and quality in it. You know what I mean? It doesn't, it's not songs. It doesn't feel like songs that you tossed off one morning. It's got a whole life of input into it. And despite the fact that it was recorded in 3 days, it sure as shit doesn't sound like it. It sounds like the kind of thing that Fleetwood Mac would have spent, $1 million just on cocaine alone to record over 18 months at the record plant,
Right, well, we spent a lot of money on sushi. During this record being made, it was the first time I ever had real wasabi.
Oh.
So we went to the sushi place. I paid for everyone's dinner. We go in, of course, Jesse's a local rock star. And the owner comes out, brings us his private sake reserve. And then next thing you know, we've got real wasabi. And, that was expensive. But, and granted, yeah, it was recorded in 2 or 3 days, but then it took 1.5 years to finish. Right. Because my budget was such. But, we flew in Paul Cartwright to do the strings on Athens Smiles, which was a very Nashville, kind of late 50s, early 60s Nashville strings. We had 11 chairs in a semicircle, and Paul came in with like 4 or 5 different instruments, and he sat down in one chair. We had 2 big condensers and then these, stereo set in the middle. He sat in one chair, recorded one part, put a damper on it, sat in the next chair. Then he grabbed a different instrument and he worked his way, and he had parts scored for everything. And by the time he was in the 11th chair, we played it back and it was like, oh, look, a string section.
One-man string section.
That's Paul Cartwright. He's crazy.
Wow.
He tours with a lot of big names. He's like first chair Hollywood Bowl violin guy.
First through 11th chairs, obviously.
Well, first through 11th, exactly. He tours with Portugal the Man and does a bunch of stuff like that. But he's just a super nice guy, and he's from Bakersfield. He's one of these kids that was, when we were kids, we all knew each other. He's friends with Jesse. We all know each other. So that happened, and then of course there's horns on the record. And again, when you're making a record like this, you totally have to be cool with it being like, hey, we're going to take a picture of this song right now. Tomorrow, it could be totally different. I mean, Bob Dylan never plays the same thing twice, right? So that's what we went in with. And I told Jesse, I said, hey, man, whatever you want to do, I'll write the checks. You just make it killer. So he calls me up one day and he goes, "Hey, I've got an idea." And I'm like, "Oh God, what now?" And he goes, "I know these horn players." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure you do." And there you have it. So he gets the sax player and this trumpet player to come in, and they just wail. And I'm like, "Okay." And he played it for me, and I was laughing. He goes, "What? Don't you like it?" I said, "No, I love it." I go, "But when am I going to recreate that? I can't like haul a horn section around for 2 songs. I mean, maybe if I get to be on a late night talk show and they have a horn section, I can be like, 'Hey, let's do this one.'" You know, who knows? So
Whatever. The songs still exist in their own space, in their own time, in their own place. And as you say, you go out and you play them, and it's you know, on your own, and it's a different thing. And but you can do that nowadays. I think, you know, people are way more receptive to coming out to see you and hear what you are doing, as opposed to just wanting to have the record reproduced, you know, in perfection.
we're doing this thing with Spotify where so the single comes out the 14th. And then directly about a week and a half after that, we're going to have an album's worth of stuff, really technically, that is the solo acoustic. Because after I was at the AMAs and we met the gal from Yellowstone, and it's a long story, but she basically said, "Look, don't send me finished stuff. If you're going to send me stuff to put on these TV shows, we want live acoustic versions, because we want to make sure that you can, you know, you can sing. We don't want studio magic. Anyone could go into a studio and fix it and make it sound good."
Right.
So I went into this local studio here in Seattle, and I recorded 32 songs live, piano and vocals, or guitar and vocals, and we videotaped them, and we're putting them together right now. We're marrying those 2 things together, and we put a rough mix on. We didn't master them. I mean, but it's, you know, we're using nice stuff through a killer SSL board and all that. So the single's gonna come out, and then like a week and a half, 2 weeks later on Spotify, there's gonna be a live acoustic version that comes out. And then that's going to correspond with a YouTube thing, a folder of live in the studio, live acoustic. Because I think you're right. I think people they hear this big, huge produced thing, and then they're like, "Yeah, but can he pull it off live?" And then they're like, "Oh, look, yeah, he can. It's different, cool, you know."
Yeah, and
So
it becomes a more unique thing, you know. It becomes a thing that they don't feel. I mean, they feel like they're only getting, you know, they're getting something different. They're getting something unique. They're not seeing the same thing everybody else is seeing, because it isn't this, you know, 10-piece big band that's been rehearsed to the nth degree and is, you know, has choreography and this and that and the other. And there's a place for all that. But I mean, with what you're doing, the music is so grounded and so based in truth and emotion and warmth and things like that anyway. So for you to take it and then transfer it to solo acoustic, it's logical, you know.
I have a band that I put together, and we go by the name Ian Jones and the Living Room All Stars.
Yeah.
And the Living Room All Stars is whoever's on stage with me that night. There is no set band. And the rule, there's not very many rules, so I've got my CD release show on April 14th at this beautiful place. It's east of Seattle, in this place called Carnation, and it's an old feed and tax store that they turned into this listening room, and it's just brilliant. It's you know, when the first time I played there, I hit my first downbeat, and it was dead quiet, and it intimidated me because I'm totally not used to everyone listening. Usually there's people fucking off and talking and clinking their glasses again. No, dead quiet. Everyone's just, you know, what's going on? So we're having the show there. And for this one, I've brought in 2 of my friends, Jeff Fielder and Andy Stoller. Andy's a bass player, he's the finest bass player. Well, there's a couple, but he's one of the finest. He played with Tracy Chapman. He plays with Ann Wilson from Heart. Jeff Fielder plays with Amy Ray from the Indigo Girls. They were just on tour. I saw them in Nashville. Played with Mark Lanigan from the Trees. Jeff's an outstanding guitar player. And then this guy, Thane Mitchell, on drums, who's, again, I've done some sessions with him. He's super tasty. And I told the guys, and I'm like, here are the songs. I sent them all the files. And I said, here's the thing. Familiarize yourself with the key and the arrangement. Don't try to learn the songs how they are on the record, because we're not going to do that. We're going to do it however we do it. So you guys familiarize yourself, make charts, and then what we're going to do is you guys will follow me, and we're just going to put our own imprint on whatever we do that night. And they're like, really? I said, totally, man. I don't want to recreate the record. That's boring. Let's just have fun and see what we come up with. We're going to have one rehearsal, and then we're going to go play the show. And my guess is it's going to be awesome.
I bet. Yeah, sounds great. Again, it's something unique, something different, which I would also think after all the years you've been doing this, you have a knowledge of what your, skills and abilities are and talents are, and also just why waste your time, recreating and Xeroxing something when you can make something, make something new and real and in the moment.
Well, and why waste your time? And I don't want to, God, I should watch what I say. I was going to say, you don't want to waste your time with, I don't want to use the word amateurs because that's not the right word, but with people that aren't professionals. Let me say that. I'll turn it around. People that are professionals who are very good bring something to the table.
Yep.
And I'm going to bring what I bring to the table. I've got the song and I'm going to sing and I'm going to play my guitar or play my piano. But what everyone else brings, just it's like a pie, and like someone brings apples and someone brings rhubarb, and but someone might bring chicken and then someone might bring potatoes and carrots. So it's like, is it a meat pie? Is it a sweet pie? Every night's going to be something different. And that's the beauty of it, because when I go see shows, I don't necessarily want to see the record. I saw Dylan once and he stood up and played, there was an acoustic guitar sitting on a stand the entire night and he didn't touch it. He stood up and played piano the whole time. And he was halfway through Tambourine Man before I realized what song it was. And I was like, okay, I mean, I don't want to see the same thing every night, but there are limits also to what I want to see.
I mean, if you're Bob Dylan, I think you have to, he pushes it a lot, right to the edge and beyond in terms of how little he cares about what the audience
and good for him.
Dylan story that I've told people a million times is one of the last times I saw him, there was an older woman in the next section over from me, and she's standing up and she's got her lighter going, and I go, oh, and that's sweet. She's excited about seeing Bob Dylan. She got the lighter. Then I realized she's got the lighter out because she's illuminating herself, giving the finger to Bob Dylan because he's doing Mr. Tambourine Man as like, a reggae polka or something.
Right.
I've never seen, so many people complain after Dylan shows, always, because I would go review Dylan shows and the next day people would come in to work or phone me up or email me and go, why can't he enunciate? And why is he changing the songs? And I'm going, have you heard of Bob Dylan before this, perhaps? Have you, went electric in 1965? Perhaps you've heard of him kind of screwing with people, but no, everybody just wants you to, if it's Dylan, they want to hear, like a Rolling Stone, bring out, dig up Al Cooper, get him on that keyboard, but whatever.
I remember the night before we left to get married, we were living in LA, and my sister had got us tickets to see REM and Wilco at the Hollywood Bowl. And this was 93. And we went, and I mean, I am a huge REM fan, huge. And I think my wife, well, I know that Michael Stipe isn't that into girls, but if he was, my wife would be like, sorry, honey, this is my pass. So we went, and here we are in LA, which is the epitome of hipness and coolness, right? And with the Hollywood Bowl, and they come out and they start the set with Begin the Begin. And I'm just like, what? No way. And they're playing Don't Go Back to Rockville. They're playing, all this stuff from like Life's Rich Pageant and Fables of the Reconstruction. I'm just in heaven. And I'm like, and we're drinking wine because we could bring wine in. Then I've got to pee. And I'm like, I don't want to miss a song. What am I going to miss? So at one point I run into the bathroom. I'm like trying to pee really fast. And there's like these four guys and they're all like, when are these guys going to play some hits? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? What do you want to hear? Something off of Green? I mean,
what do you want? Shiny Happy People? Yeah,
exactly. You want to hear something off Eponymous? It's like, good God. But, what are you going to do?
LA.
Well, in Seattle now,
Yeah.
I mean, Shoegazerville. I mean, no one claps, no one dances. Anyway, it's a fun place to live. Fun place. I'm not sure how Winnipeg is. I've never been, but I'm sure it's beautiful.
It is in the summer. You got to come up here. You should come up through Canada. You can do folk festivals all the way across the country.
I'll put the team on it. I'll be like, let's go and do that.
Get on it. Lots of driving, but hey, it's nice driving, pleasant.
Love driving. That's the other thing about music. if you want to be a musician and you want to be successful, if you're not comfortable leaving your hometown, then you may want to reassess what you want to do.
Yeah, or join a lounge band. Yeah.
Because you got to leave. You've got to go out and you got to see the country and you got to drive and you got to be willing to face. I mean, I'm going on this 3.5 week thing. There's snow everywhere. And now there's this Pineapple Express coming in that's going to melt all the snow. And I'm supposed to be driving right through that. And I'm like, whatever happens, happens.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, drive careful. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for all.
Thanks for enjoying the record, man. I mean, I don't know if we got off on a sidetrack somewhere, but I just love talking to people.
Oh yeah, no, and I love the record. It was, I mean, a name like Ian Jones, you sound like you should be, I don't know, like a bass player who got kicked out of Deep Purple after the first album or something. So I was not expecting. Yeah, or a member of Parliament or a football player or something. That's a name those are the careers you should have with a name like Ian Jones. But I wasn't expecting what I got out of the record, So it was fabulous,
Well, I've never been a fan of using my name. I hated it. But had I started in 1993 and said Ian Jones and the Orange King and used my name, I would have much more product recognition. And then this goes back to business. I remember when Coke changed their name and then they're like, oh, then they lost all their market share. And they're like, oh no, Classic Coke, we're back. And it was like, that was a stupid mistake. Someone got fired over that. So I get it. I mean, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, this, that, it's like, yeah, I hate it. But I guess I'm going to be Ian Jones until I die. So I might as well just deal with it.
It is who you are.